Welcome everybody. Here is another episode of Knights
host,
of the Round Table. We broke out some Sauvignon. Is that how I say it right?
You're doing great.
Cabernet Sauvignon
From
from Napa Valley. Okay.
On, naps.
We broke it out. It's been a minute because we've been doing it in the daytime, in the morning, and that's just
And
weird.
we're not that out of control.
Life hasn't gone there yet.
We haven't crossed those boundaries yet. But it's called Navigator, and it's a 2018. What are you thinking?
As I'm opening
As
my
always, Bobise has a heavy pour, and I actually have probably a little bit too much, but let's try this.
Cheers.
I'm just going to give Bobise my excess.
You're always welcome at ours. Oh, sorry, wrong time. Tastes like
That's actually
wine.
good.
That's nice.
That
Oh,
is
Brandon,
good.
have you learned a whole palate?
Ooh,
He's
very
swishing.
good.
It's good, right?
Full bodied.
And I'm usually not.
Smooth.
Smooth.
I can
I'm
taste-
usually not the one to say that it's awesome.
What do you taste in there, Manny?
I don't know. I don't know. It
He
just
says, I feel
tastes-
the hints. Can taste the hints of wine.
And the bottle's good though. The bottle's
It's
cool.
kind of cool.
I got
too.
like a hint of like leather. There's also kind of like a little bit of a what's that kind of? It's not
It's
fruity.
really smooth.
Yeah.
It feels good going
Yeah.
down. I'm not even gonna lie.
I'm so proud of you.
Yeah. Wow. That's a very complex.
Right? Usually I
We
say
come to find out it's like a
tastes like feet.
$1,000 bottle of wine.
Oh my god, Angela's gonna be so mad at me if this is an expensive bottle.
Guys, I think
Okay.
this is an expensive bottle of wine. Can someone look it
Oh
up?
my god.
I don't want to look it up. Actually, I do want to look it up. Ooh, again.
What is it? Navigator?
I'm gonna tell you
I'm
guys.
gonna lie.
Oh my gosh, you guys. Let's see.
I don't think like it. I feel like it might be in the $30 to $50 range.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine.
$40. Well, actually, that is expensive for a
It is
bottle.
actually kind of expensive for a bottle of wine.
Not really, guys. Like,
No?
It's like, no, that's not bad.
Well,
That's
we'll drink the
mid-tier.
rest of it when we have dinner. We're having dinner tonight.
Yeah,
You guys, this wordable
What?
game is so dope. 'cause
I'm 100% ordering it.
It is.
It's gonna
It
be part
has
of my late night purchases.
sparked the previous episode that ended up. We didn't even end up talking about what we were going to talk
That's
about.
true.
Isn't that like the Lord?
Oh,
That's
why
like the
don't you
way-
do
Let him
it?
take.
Just let him
Just
lead.
let him take control, guys.
Won't he do it? Yes, he
Won't-
does.
Mhm.
Yes, he does.
Okay, this first question is a deep one, guys.
Okay, ready.
Okay, what part of you still needs healing?
Brandon.
Oh.
Let the spirit.
Oh
settle on
man,
that
the
one.
part of me that still needs healing is the navigation
Hey.
Hey.
of people who I really once looked up to and adored and admired. Choose to continue on the same path that they've been on, and me realizing so much about myself and about God, and realizing I'm going on a whole nother path. And that part that feels like there's this weird part that still feels like sometimes, man, am I still disappointing to this person? Man, how can this person say these things during this time? Man, how can this person still believe in this? You know, all those sorts of things. So feeling like just that disappointment in them as heroes, and in my eyes, in a lot of ways, I'm like, oh, some of the things you actually believe and some of the things you stand for, you're actually like kind of the villain in the story now. And so it's like when heroes become villains, it's like a part of me that definitely still needs
Wow.
healing. So
How to navigate that. That's super interesting. It reminds me, before I go to mine, of like when I did this study on, I think it was 1 Timothy, I can't remember, but Peter and Paul had this interaction where Paul comes to Peter, who stopped like viewing Gentiles as like the enemy in a sense, but now he's sitting back at the table with the Jews. It's like a cafeteria moment, and Paul walks in, he's like, bro, are you freaking kidding me? Like,
yeah.
what are you doing? You're vacillating. Like, choose one. Where are you going to go? And Peter was just like, sorry about that. And I don't know. The end of the story is good, I guess. But he apologized or something. But Paul called him out for like, hey, you started down this really good path, man, like where you were including Gentiles and said they were welcome. And now you're back at the table with these guys. Like, that kind of reminds me of that. I think I'm on the part of me that still needs healing is the vacillation. Is the
That's a big word. Break it down for our listeners.
vacillation, going back and forth between being afraid to go on the journey and really wanting to go on the journey of like, what have I believed that is God, and what have I believed out of an insecurity and need for validation and people pleasing in a world that I'm very familiar and know how to get it from? How do I step out of a green room or off a stage or out of the four walls of a church for long enough to let the applause die down and have that insecurity moment of like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. am I the one that's doing the wrong thing? But also, how do I vacillate? And it always brings me back to a conversation you and I had in the pool back at the house. And where I was like, what if we're wrong? Do you remember that? And I was like, what if we're wrong? And I think about it weekly. I literally think about that conversation weekly because you were smiling. You did like a Brandon smile and you were like, Elise, you said you probably don't have to worry about that. And you were like, I don't think you're ever going to get to the extreme of hating the church or like, but for me, it has been this vacillation of like, I have so much love for the church. And I also have this deep part of me that needs healing that also wants to please and validate leaders that like we're not part of like that term. I confuse the words leaders and church. Does that make sense? I don't know if that like,
yeah, I get what you're saying.
That's the context of what needs healing because I need to give context.
So I think for me, what still needs healing, does it have to be spiritual? Can it be just like, I think it's
like sore thumb
the feeling
of
no, I guess just the feeling of not being where I want to be. Is that a thing? I don't know if that's healing. Like,
go a little bit deeper.
Well, it's the part is the dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
Of where now is for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Feeling like my work ethic should have me way farther. And I don't know. So maybe that's disappointment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is like, that's such a good one.
Yep. I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Which I don't even like sitting in that. I don't like sitting in that, but I feel like I can't
I think it's
help.
okay to acknowledge it though.
Yeah.
I think you sit in it long enough to acknowledge and then you don't carry it.
Yeah, I can't help. And I feel it more so, if I were to be honest, probably 5 times this week. I'm not going to say the name of the person that I cross her Instagram. Love her to death. So proud of her.
Is it me?
That was my
and
first thought.
And that's what still needs healing on me.
But, she's succeeding in certain areas.
Thank
and
you.
my thought was like multiple times, I was like, my wife could do that and then some. Mm-hmm. Like, she can do that. Why isn't she getting the opportunity? And I get so angry that I have to just shut it off. And I'm like, so it extends from me to her, and I feel it more for her than for me. Cause I don't know, maybe because I'm a cheerleader and I see her.
You love her. You want her, like,
I just want her to win. I feel like if she wins, I'll be more happy if she wins than if I win. Yeah, for sure. Okay, this next one. What is your favorite high school memory?
Oh gosh,
Elise has a few.
This is a
I
light
have
one.
a few. You know what I'm saying?
This is a light one.
Probably like Broadway musicals.
Did
and
you
Night
were
on
in?
Broadway. I was such a drama nerd. Are you kidding me?
Okay, then give me one. What's your highlight?
Hamilton? Well, I was never the lead. Because I guess I don't know if I wasn't that good or whatever. I would say my favorite high school memory would have to be, actually though, we had a jazz band. It was a big band, stage band that we traveled with, and there was 3 singers, me, my friend Jessica Newey, who has a fire voice, and like one of those people that like you didn't imagine that voice coming out of that person, like little stick white girl with like curly hair, and she like her voice, I was like, wait, what? Like her voice is incredible. She like got all of their Respect songs, and I got like It's a Marvelous Night for a Moon Dance.
Twinkle, twinkle.
Yeah, Little Star. And the guy singer, who's the boy that was my first like boyfriend, not boyfriend, that guy.
Power
but like
couple.
we went for a tour, and like just those moments together, we recorded an album when you have like your first crushes, plus you're traveling, and then you're like getting to do something you feel really good in. That was like so much fun.
Favorite high school
Well, my
moment?
first kiss, but we don't have time. Many.
Your first kiss was in high school?
Mm-hmm.
Was it magical?
No, it was like a dishwasher. And I just remember standing on the skateboard and fearing for my life, but I wanted to look cool, and he was taller than me.
Wait,
So I
what do you
stood
mean
on
a
the
dishwasher?
skateboard.
Like his mouth in your mouth?
He just like went for it with the saliva. Like he was like, hey, I'm going to stick my whole tongue down your throat and impregnate you with my tongue. Like, that kind of thing. And I didn't know. I stayed up the rest of the night thinking I was pregnant. So
She's like, oh no.
this is how it happens.
happening.
This is how it happens.
I feel the life inside of me.
gonna have to tell my parents I can't do the Christian musical for Easter anymore. I've sinned. Like, it's a whole thing.
Favorite high school memory, man.
I got a few.
Do you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe
One of them as obviously sports related. So
Obviously,
got to do
same.
a lot with basketball, but like we won a state championship for California. That year we were third in the entire country. The number one team at that year was Kevin Durant's team, his high school team.
What?
So like we were balling. But it happened so this was going into my senior year. Like, I'd been all state, was like one of the top point guards in the entire country, all sorts of stuff. So ESPN did this high school magazine called REYES. And I was the cover story.
Whoa.
I got on a cover magazine. So they came to school one day, they shut down the whole gym. I got excused from class and we're having a whole photo shoot in the gym. So
No
like
way.
a couple more boys coming in and I'm like in my jersey, like fitted. I literally went to the mall. Like I cut class earlier that day so I could go cop a new pair of shoes just for the magazine. I was like, yo, I'm out here studying. So when the magazine actually came out, the school threw like this whole like party with it. Like there was like
Wow.
ESPN came with like gear, like shirts, and then there's just hundreds of these magazines, and everyone's like, yo, B. Smitty, like this is fire. Like, yo, can you sign my magazine? And for like a young guy whose ego is like, it was like,
Totally.
I'm on top of the world. I was on a magazine cover, and you just let everybody in my high school
You're like, Lakers are about to call me.
party with me, celebrating my magazine being out.
Yeah, that's
Like,
dope.
so that was
So
pretty cool.
cool.
And then like right after that was I actually got an ESPN the magazine.
Oh, wow.
And so they had mentioned me and my high
That's
school team in
legit.
the back. So someone called me and was like, yo, you're in ESPN magazine. This happened like a week after I was on cover story. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. That was definitely a highlight. Like,
That is so cool, dude.
I don't have anything that dope. I don't think anything. I mean, I loved high school, but I don't know about the memories.
Oh, what
That's
about
so
that youth
dope.
leader that I try to bring up every episode I'm on?
No, I think no. The dopest part. Well, there was this awesome love triangle that came into fruition
Tell us
in high
more.
school. My friend Yari, shout out Yari. She lives in London now, married with kids.
London.
We liked each other from jump, right? From 9th grade. And it just so happens that I ended up getting with this other girl from an opposite school, our rival school. This is so Romeo and Juliet. I got with this girl
Wait,
from our
now I have a
rival
story.
school, and then she ended up getting with my best friend because I was already with this other girl. And literally we went 2-3 years with these other people. And then there was this fateful like summer where she was broken up.
Fish
I was
tank,
broken
Leonardo
up.
DiCaprio.
And we both finally, we finally got together.
Did you tell her or did she tell you first?
I don't remember that. I remember it was like
Girls
an-
remember these details.
was
Girls
an
know
ex-
who said what.
It was an explosion. It was so dope. But it also made me think like, man, I wonder, like we
What would have
got
happened?
along. We got along so much. Like we would have, our couple ship would have been dope. Like
That was
her
like-
and I.
That was
But
how
we ended up not going serious because
Church?
we didn't want to hurt. We didn't want to hurt
The girl?
my best friend.
So that's how like I ended up with the Matt, that like my first like love, who's like still like doing really well in music, like in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
He and I were best friends. We were singers in our stage band. And I was obsessed with him. First time I ever heard him sing R. Kelly's "I Believe I Can Fly."
ooh,
And rightly so.
That song will always do it to you.
he was wearing a green silk shirt at a talent quest.
Jeez.
Yes. green
Shout
And
out
I
to
said to my
Matt.
friend, I said, I'm going to marry that boy. As Elise at 13 would have. Anyway, so he didn't want anything to do with me. And then about 4 years later, like I looked different because that's high school. And he came back from like a tour that he was on. He was like, who's that? And then I didn't like him anymore. It was like a tit for tat thing, but no tits, I swear. Like I was a Christian. And so then he got a girlfriend. And as soon as he got the girlfriend, then I was like, oh my God, I love him.
I gotta have him.
I gotta have him. Milani, who's now married to like the guy that used to be my youth pastor. And so I remember being like, I'm gonna tell him. I gotta tell him, mainly because of competition. And so I remember telling him that night. We text every night. Like I don't even know if it's real or I made it up, but like yeah, it's real. We text every night, and I text him one night. And I said, hey, I have to talk to you tomorrow. Meet me at the big tree at recess.
Oh,
And
wow.
so-
Early recess, late recess.
So we have recess, morning tea, and then lunch is like how Australian schools do it. So
Morning,
recess,
tea, and then lunch?
it's called recess. So it's like little lunch. I don't know if you guys have it like for half an hour,
Pre-lunch.
and then like lunch is an hour. And so at recess, he comes over to my friendship group. We're sitting on the driveway because that's where the cool kids sit. I'm drinking my Diet Coke because I had probably bordering eating disorder. And so he comes over and he's like, Elise, did you want to talk? And my friends all know what's happening. They're like, you got this, Elle, because they used to call me Elle. And I was like, okay, guys, here I go. Right in front of him, like as if, what are you doing? This is not clueless. What's happening?
Wow.
So we walk over to the big tree and I'm like, hey, I have to tell you something, but I can't tell you yet. So then I tell him, meet me at lunch at the grand piano.
Wow, there's a lot of meeting
Send
going
this man
on.
on a scavenger hunt.
It's a scavenger hunt of love. And then so at lunch we meet at the grand piano, and I can remember I walk in and he's already playing the grand piano. Like he's already playing because he's as dramatic as I was. And so
Pieces of me.
yes, it was like 20 Good Reasons. I don't know if you guys had that song. So then
Hoopstick.
we get there. All I remember is like finally like he tells me I broke up with Milani last night, and I was like, you did what? Like thinking like I'm so shocked. And he's like, yeah, I broke up with her, as he's playing chords. And I'm like,
gosh.
well,
Kind
Matt,
of pimp.
like, I like you. And he was like, stops playing, looks at me, he's like, I like you too. And I said, but we have a problem because my dad won't let me date. Like, we're into a Hallmark Christian movie. And then he said, no, I forgot about this. He says, meet me at the end of the day in the music rooms. So I meet him and he's written me a letter, and then he went on Australian Idol, and it was like, and then it was just like
He got too big for
from there.
you.
He got too
Got
big
it.
for me, guys. He
Hey,
got too big for
high
me.
school.
What if you get a letter tomorrow? It's like, meet me at the Golden Gate Bridge.
I didn't realize how many meeting places there were till I like retold that story. Scavenger hunt.
Meet me at the goal.
High school scavenger hunts, am I right?
Man, that's amazing.
Yep.
I miss high
That's a
school.
lot. You got your steps in for the day, huh?
I miss high school, y'all.
10,000 steps.
Man. Okay, this time we're gonna get into this.
Yeah.
If you read
What's up?
the heading, it's we're talking about us versus them. There's this in preparation for this, I was looking to see how many other people have talked about tribalism in Christianity, and there's not a lot. There's like only people, and it's like super small following, super small whatever, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting because I wanted to hear other people's takes on it. And guys, there's like tribalism I'm gonna define, okay? And this is actually, it's interesting because when I look at the definition, literally is the state or fact of being organized in a tribe or tribes.
Mm-hmm.
But the derogatory is the behavior and attitudes that stem from strong loyalty to one's tribe or social group,
Yeah.
which is really what we're talking about. Tribalism versus community. And the question that hit me while I was reading one of Rob Bell's books was, have we perfected more tribalism as a church than actual community? And in order to like differentiate between the two, that's why I wanted to define it. So most people, when using tribalism now, like tribalism was something that's happened since the beginning of time. This was when it was fight or die, kill or be killed. It was very much you're in your tribe and everything around you was made to kill you.
Yeah, it's for survival.
It's full survival mentality. So it's very much like there's a violent edge to tribalism. It's very much you are you, we are us, and we don't intermix at all. Whereas community is a little bit different. So where I see is community is having something similar in common and then bonding in that. So like the examples I gave to Bobis was like, okay, so for community, we all live in this same neighborhood.
So
That makes us communal. We may not agree on politics. We
On
may not
anything
agree
except
on
for the fact that you
anything
live
except
in
the
the
fact
same
that
neighborhood.
you're my neighbor. We're in community together because we walk by each other. We use the same road. We use the same water source. We use the same everything. So we're in community.
Or like a gym. If you're in a gym community.
A gym community, same thing.
CrossFit.
We're
massive
not talking about
that can border on tribalism.
yeah, right. CrossFit is different. But then there's tribalism. So here's an example. Even recently, okay, vaccinated, non-vaccinated. That became tribal. It became literally a thing that pushed an election that causes these strong negative emotions on each side. It is like intense. It's never brought up in a light manner. And so it made me think about that on how we are towards each other when it comes to this gospel narrative. And at least in my experience, I have felt more tribalism than anything else. And I don't want to make tribes like being fully negative, because there is a positive version of it. Like, you know, back then, again, it was life or death, but at least you found your tribe, you found security, you found safety, you found people who always had your back, you know, because you aligned on a lot of things. You felt strongly about the same things. But when you start making it an us or them, us versus them, and I used to do this as a early Christian rapper days.
All the time.
Always used to be like mad at quote unquote secular rappers because they would rap about money, hoes, and clothes. Like it's somehow like as if I expected them to rap about Jesus when they weren't living for Jesus. And I was like offended. And
You
I
were
would
offended at them or the success?
No. I was just offended at them. It was so stupid. Like when I think about it, and it was mainly because I would hear other Christian rappers diss
Yeah. Well,
secular rappers.
That's a huge part of it, right?
Like, oh, y'all think you're, you know, because you got money, but money ain't nothing. You know, it's all about the Lord, you know.
Money ain't ish.
Yeah, it's very like,
Jesus.
so I used to make fun of it. And then one day I just really was like, what do I expect from these people? I can't expect them to rap about things that they don't know about. Just like I'm not going to rap about stuff that I don't know about.
Yeah.
It didn't make sense, but I fully pitted an us versus them mentality.
Yeah.
And it's still happening to this day so strong because I get it all the time online.
Yeah. It's easy too. I think one of the things that, especially when my view of heaven and hell was very clear, it was a lot easier to feel self-righteous about myself and the things that I was abstaining from, and putting me as us, as the good people, the people who get in, versus people who are out here living their freest lives, doing whatever they want, and me low-key kind of jealous of their, quote, freedom.
But just wait.
And again, that's probably even that's another conversation. No, that's not another conversation. We'll get into that in a second, as far as freedom being a part of community. But it was one of those things where I always judged them. Like I was like, you guys are the people that aren't good. You guys are the people that don't get in. So it was always about me building walls and never actually trying to build connections with people, you know?
Oh, wow.
I think in my mind, and I'd love to ask this question too, like what's the biggest differential between the tribalism and the community in your guys' eyes? For me, it's this visual of tribes do their best to build wall, to build a separating piece, and communities have much less of that, and it's more of an open door to be a part of.
Yeah, I like that. I think that like I hadn't really, obviously, I feel like a lot of these topics I don't think about a lot before you guys bring them up, and I'm like, oh yeah, damn. So this is another one, and I was like, oh, I thought it was like Survivor and like the alliances people make, and then I was like, oh, it's an actual thing.
Yeah.
But I think like when I think about back on tribes, like apart from like my youth ministry days, and we had tribes, and like, are you in team green tribe or blue tribe? But like actual tribes, like it was very much you're safe with us, and if you leave us, then you're gonna be killed. And so I know that in some of the church scenarios that I've been in, which again I just speak from like life experience, I, especially being a pastor's kid, I didn't realize how much I made an us versus them mentality. Like I literally, I wrote an article about this once, about this mob mentality that I used to have of if you leave, not just the church, but my church, like there was such thing as you could go to the wrong church. Yeah. In terms of like, not even we have same beliefs, right? But if you leave my dad's church, if you leave Shy Alive and you go to this church down the road, Guy Mia or whatever, that was like a suburb in Australia. But I'd be like, they're like disloyal. And then it would go like, it would just, again, spiral into this offense that I wouldn't want to see them, because then I was like, they're not a part of us anymore. Yeah. And so without putting a label to it, was absolutely that feeling of that. And so as you grow, you kind of get a bigger world perspective. Yeah. I think for me, the idea of tribe, like it is driven, I think that was your question, like by fear or the biggest connection.
No, what's the differentiating piece between the two?
So I think like the differential thing is like, I feel like tribe is like, when I'm in this, I have authority, and it's very fear driven to not leave. Because when I'm in here, I'm being protected from out there, which is, I guess, the walls thing. And the community is, I'm trying to find how we're similar.
Yeah.
So like what connects us is our similarities, not you have to be in the tribe and not this is your whole life. Whereas I feel like community could be, this is a part of your life.
Yeah.
And
That you said it perfectly. You defined mine. So for community to me,
you said a lot of words. So hopefully
the last part, community to me is finding ways that we are connected. Tribalism is finding ways we
Everyone
are not
is,
connected. So a very big difference. It's like a problem I have some friends that think this way, where it's like, if they're listening to somebody and that they disagree with one thing that person says, I've known them to just write that person off.
Yeah.
it's really hard to have conversations with people like that, because then you can see them stop listening. You feel the wall go up and you're like, no, I'm trying to show you the way we're connected.
Yeah.
Like
But
I was
all
telling,
they can see is the thing that they disagree with.
I was telling B, I don't know if I was telling you, I was watching an atheist sermon today in preparation for this.
Atheists have sermons?
Yeah.
It's like TED Talks.
This guy, it was basically that. I don't know if it was an atheist convention, but he used to work at this
Wow.
big Christian radio station, one of the leaders for Youth for Christ,
Wow.
a pastor at his church. And he did this talk called How Christianity Made Me Talk Stupid. And he just brought up all the things that he used to say and do. And he was just like, this makes no sense. Like, but this is how I would talk. And I don't know many Christians that would sit and watch an atheist sermon, because like, what could you possibly learn? But what I listen to is like, I want to know why people chose not to be with Jesus. Like, what are all your reasons? I want to know how y'all think more than I want to know how we think.
You're an investigator as well. It's like
Yeah, like it's
personality.
way more to me, because if I understand what you don't see in us, then I can better gauge on how I talk, how I address, how I treat you. And I never used to think like that. It was always more so, if you don't have what I believe to be true, then I can't rock with you. And it's funny because Rob Bell brings it up in that book too, about truth, how Paul was saying, you know,
All truth
like
belongs to you.
You can find truth anywhere.
Yeah.
And we were raised to think that only truth can be found in the Bible.
And there's only a certain kind of truth.
Yeah.
As
So
if-
there's a war against science.
Yeah.
When it's like, all science does is prove the systems that God put in place and how they work.
Yeah.
They don't give credit to God, but they explain humanistically, like, this is how photosynthesis works. This is how plants eat. This is how they give off oxygen. We believe it to be designed by God. So all they're giving us is a pragmatic way that God did something
Giving
freaking
evidence.
miraculous.
But doesn't that also come back to the Bible? So it kind of, is it true? Like,
But we weren't taught that. It was, when it comes to science
Sure.
and religion, it's
just don't
us
even have the conversation with
versus
scientists.
them.
Yeah.
It's evolution.
Yes, I hear what you're saying.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of this is true, but there isn't truth outside of this.
Correct.
And it's like, you know, and that's the funny thing too, is because there's this like divide that people have. Well, there's God's truth, and then there's like another truth, as if God isn't truth himself and owns all of it.
Yeah.
That's why Paul is saying, wherever it is that you could find things that are true, that is truth.
Yep.
Here is an invitation for you to own all of it. Whether that is in relationship, you find out this truth. Whether that is in you watching a TV show, whether that is you going to a concert, wherever it is, you can find truth because it belongs to you, because it belongs to him. You know? So,
Man, it's so
It's-
important.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
I don't want to say I'm playing devil's advocate because I don't even really know what that means, so I won't say that. But I have a question because I've seen a lot lately. Oh, honestly, in the last 10 years, but for some reason I've been noticing a lot more lately. A lot of my friends that are also pastors' kids that have grown up to be pastors, and just people like very much in the more like truth kind of Christian church world. Does that make sense? And so they say, I'm noticing a lot that there's this generation is growing up and saying, your truth is like, your truth is your truth. And like all truth is truth. And so I'm hearing that. And I think I understand what they're saying, but I also understand what you guys are saying. And that's like totally my life. Like, I feel like I've always been in between, but like,
I've had an argument with somebody about this.
okay. I'm just curious because I feel like they are off in the sense that they're, again, tribalism, wanting to say everybody else isn't in our church, or the way we do Western American church is wrong because they have a different way of seeing truth. Not that there aren't also black and whites in this conversation, but it's almost like they want to cut that off and not even have the conversation and just make people afraid to, for example, listen to a conversation like this on this podcast, right? Yeah. And for me,
the problem is that if it doesn't, I find that a lot of Christians break down, this is why I respect and love Jordan Peterson so much, because he's like, whenever we argue about God, I don't use the Bible to defend anything. Because in order to use the Bible to defend something with somebody who doesn't think the Bible is real, you have to start with the agreement that this book was written by God and everything in it is real and true.
If you
can't believe that, then it's like,
that's good.
Oh, then your argument, then you have nothing, Christian, you have nothing else to say, because you
and
can't.
If that's all you've ever gone to and not had conversations with scientists,
you can't even say a single thing because you have been taught and raised to believe that this is the only thing. And we're not saying that it's not truth found in the word, but most people will not agree with that word. So if they don't, and you try to tell them that their truth isn't real, we get stuck on being right or wrong. Like, what offends you by allowing someone to live what their truth is? Let them live it out, and they'll come to the realization themselves if their true really is true. Just like you do, sir. Even though you believe in the Bible, you can say, oh, this is true, but then life hits you, and then all of a sudden you're like, crap, that doesn't,
what I thought was
it doesn't ring true anymore, because life has taught me that I was very naive in this.
Well, you just get a bigger perspective of it. What I used to think was this.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then I lived past 12.
How many times have we walked ourselves back from preaching one thing, and then all of a sudden life taught us a hard-ass lesson, and it's like, damn, it is a lot more nuanced than that. So the same way you're still learning it, they're learning it. So to me, the most important thing is truth can be found anywhere. It's very difficult to begin a relationship, foster a relationship, continue a relationship with somebody who doesn't believe what you believe if you degrade their truth and make it seem lesser than yours.
Yeah.
Because it's your experience. Because your experience is from the Bible. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
I do. I feel like B was going to say something.
Yeah. Now, the other thing, too, that I would add is that although there are truths, and all truth is truth because it belongs to God, there are deeper truths, bigger truths. So it's like, I remember when we moved down here we were living just outside Pasadena when I was young, we had a pool in our backyard. And this pool was so weird in the way that it was structured, because half of the pool was like, a couple feet deep. And then there was a huge plunge to the other thing. So at one point it was hard to swim in the 3 feet because I wasn't that tall, wasn't that old. Eventually I got to the point where I got comfortable enough where I could go to the deep end. It's the same pool. There's just one end that's shallow, and then there's another end that's way deeper. It's the same thing with truth. There's truth. And this is my belief, that the simple truths of life, if you follow those things hard enough and honestly enough, you will end up at the source of all truth. And that's God himself. So it's like, I think approaching those things is understanding, like, although you might be in the shallow end, you're still in the pool, baby. That's a win. That's a win. And hopefully you continue to venture on and grow up and swim a little bit better and go to the deeper end, because there are bigger, deeper truths about the universe, about yourself, about God. And we get to taste like little snack-sized things of that. And those snack-sized things, to me, I think are invitations to go on the journey.
Yeah.
So
thanks for answering that. I'm at the moment being in the middle, kind of feeling like a little bit like rejected from a certain tribe that I gave my life to, and was like, hey, and started seeing other doors open up. So naturally going to follow those doors. And then suddenly it's a looking back, oh, the tribe have turned their back in a sense, until I prove that either I can make my own tribe or that my tribe's connected, or like, you know how tribes, you know how tribes like to join to your tribe when you seem successful.
You can no longer serve them. And I think that's another thing too about community. Community serves
each other.
Everyone
has a role.
Yeah,
in a
the
sense.
tribe is, what do you bring here? Like, how can you serve us?
It's a hoarding mentality, right?
And I also think like the important thing, because this is something I always like to stress, because it's easy to be in a community, even when it comes to deconstructionists, like, or those of us who
I still wouldn't call mine deconstruction. Maybe that's because I'm afraid of the word. I don't know.
Okay, yeah, no,
Trigger word.
asking questions. If you're in the asking questions phase, right? It's so easy to then turn it, like the thing that was happening to you, to turn it on them. Kind of like what B was saying, or like, how can you think this, or how do you believe this, or how? And I always try to remind people, it's like, yo, that system that you've turned from, that you are now breaking apart, shattering, served you. Yeah, totally. It served you at a point. So you can't all around turn and just start shitting on it.
100%.
You got to give it its respect, and you got to be okay saying, I grew, and at one point I chose this road. Like these people aren't bad. They're not whatever. They're just on that road. And I think we can relieve so much hurt and less of a us versus them. Because now it's like, oh, it's the over spiritual people. And I did the same thing. I went from like,
it's almost like a phase of it. Like,
it's always going to be an us versus them if you have a tribal mentality. Like if that is how you see, and it is how we were taught to see it all. Us versus them, holy versus unholy. And I'm not saying these type of topical matters don't exist. There is a holy and unholy that God calls. There is a his people, not his people. Yeah. Paul had this issue when the Christians were like, I follow Paul, and the other ones were like, I follow Apollo. You know, like they were clicking into tribes based on teachers that they like to listen to.
Still
we do it
now.
I go to this. I like, this
Stephen
guy.
Furtick.
Yeah.
I like Hillsong.
I prefer Judah.
I like, Judah.
You know, and those of you who go to Pastor Joel Osteen is not enough hell, and then this guy, it's too much hell.
Yep.
And Paul was just like, bruh, you're missing it all. Like, you're really missing it all when we decide to do that to ourselves.
And that's the problem, right? Is that if you disagree with one thing and it's tribalism, then you won't even have the conversation.
Yeah. No, you're out. If you disagree with the one thing, you're out. Yeah. You are completely, it's like going to a Pentecostal church and not believing in healing.
Yeah, no,
they can't get past that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you agree on everything else. They will not get past that. Or if you do believe in healing, but you don't believe in speaking in tongues.
That now becomes the topic of every single conversation. So then you lose the relationship that even brought you to the tribe in the first place.
You're gone.
B, what's that book?
Well, I think
He's
this
got a
is
book
good.
over there.
So I think in my eyes, now this is the dreamer part of me that's like, okay, then what are the things that mark a healthy community? The kind of community that God himself envisioned that we can read through the scriptures, which the early church had, which Paul wrote. When I knew we were going to talk about this, there's this book that I bought. This is a long time ago. This is back when I was still pastoring. Because my vision has always been like, man, how do I build a community? How do I create space for people to really thrive in, a space where people can be free, a place where people can be transformed, and a place where people can be honest. To me, those are the things that mark. But this book is called Paul's Idea of Community by Robert Banks, who used to teach at Fullerton? Yeah, no, not Fullerton.
Fuller Seminary.
Yeah, Fuller Seminary. And it's pretty amazing because there's a few things, and I'm only going to touch on two things because this book is super dense. But he says Paul's understanding of freedom and salvation is bound up with his idea of community. So when you think about that, when we're urged to work out our salvation, that there is this link in Paul's mind that community is this place where you're going to grow to get saved. And there's going to be this continual process of you growing and evolving. And at the same time, too, you having the freedom to explore that. Anybody knows that when you're growing, there is growing pains. Anyone knows that when you grow, you make stupid decisions. Like when I was a teenage, like my mind
we started this podcast
wasn't
with it.
fully developed yet. My PFC, my prefrontal cortex is not even developed. That's why I made stupid decisions. But there was freedom to actually grow and to evolve into what I was going to be. And so one of the things he talks about with that freedom is a few things.
Wow.
And he says, hey, to summarize freedom for Paul in what healthy community, what godly community actually looks like, there's three main components of that freedom: independence, dependence, and interdependence.
Okay.
In the independence, it is now in community, as God is working himself out through these other people in your life, there is independence from certain things, like sin, the law, death, powers out there. Now there's independence and freedom for certain things, righteousness, conformity to Jesus. And then it's also resulting in a personal and life-giving experience of liberty, right? At one point, Paul, he in 2 Corinthians, and I've talked about this a long, long time ago, where he talks about, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. And he ends up talking about Moses, and he's like, Moses was putting on a show for you guys. At one point, he lost the glory, and he put a veil over his head. He was wearing a mask, but we ourselves, we get to live our lives unmasked. What he's essentially saying is there is freedom for you to be as raw and real as you need to be. That you don't have to put a mask and you don't have to play pretend. That in godly community, there is freedom for you to live your life unmasked. Because that is where the Spirit of the Lord is, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. The other thing he talks about is dependence, right? We have freedom to depend on Christ and to depend upon the Spirit who communicates with us inside. The other thing is interdependence with others, because real freedom leads to service and can only be practically defined in relation to others' needs. I've never seen freedom like that.
Say that again.
Freedom,
explain.
Interdependence with others, because liberty leads to service and can only be practically defined in relation to the needs of others. That when you're truly free, that's where you could be generous.
Wow.
And when you're truly free, the only way that could actually be defined in an interdependent community is how well you're of service to other people.
Because if you're being generous, because you're not worried about anything. And tribalism, in a sense, there is like I said before, there is that hoarding mentality. That is, we have to keep everything in here. It's for us because it's us against them. And once you're free, then the generosity. I had this revelation last year when oh shoot, what was it? We bring things to the table. We all come to the table. We all bring things to the table, right? That verse, and crap, I freaking forgot it, and I can't even think of any context right now, but go with me. I'll find it, whatever. Is that word for anyone in need? That's what it was. The early church. Yeah. They came, they ate together, and they gave to anyone who had need. That word need, the original word, meant anyone who had business, anyone who had intention, anyone who had a reason for it. Not just like we bring it all together and it's just for us and no more. It's strategy. It's, hey, how can we best serve everyone around here? The only way I can bring everything to the table is if I'm so freed up, trusting God and having enough of my own that there's enough left over that I'm not even worried about my rent or whatever. Like, we can bring it to the table when you have that much freedom and leftover. And when everyone's doing that, then of course, and everyone also has need. They already had their intention of like, hey, here's what I'm doing. I'm taking responsibility for my life and what I'm doing. And I'm mature enough to know that I'm not just going to waste what is ours. I'm bringing what I have and knowing my place and doing what and in that, there's a spirit of generosity that breaks out.
Yeah.
The other thing too is the interdependence with the world. Since the universe itself will experience the liberty of transformation along with those who are Christ's. So there's even this connection that we have with the world now. Now that we're a part of a community, now that God has transformed our lives, we now actually have this relationship with the world where there is freedom now, where this transformation that we have, the universe itself is going to experience that as well.
Because a community, like a neighborhood, can come and go. Tribe, you never leave.
Right.
Whereas if a community is like, I'm going to work, but I'm going to come home.
Yeah.
Well, that, and you're
not
understanding,
sitting out there waiting for everyone to come home at night. That,
and when you start understanding that on a bigger context is what I believe that thing is saying is that there's a world community, there is a global community that we all share in way more massive things that we're different. The human experience is to be loved and to love. Like, I don't know anyone, or maybe there's very few evil people that they don't want love and they don't want to give love, but I can't imagine anyone starting that way. No. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, the human experience that we all share, which you see it in all, every culture's movies, every culture's music, there's this desire to be loved, wanted, and to be a part of something. So if we can understand that once we leave our tribes, which it's okay to do, right? So this Knights of the Round Table, I believe, is a tribe, but a healthy one, in a sense that we understand when we're together, it's tribe and community. And then when we're outside of it, it's full community, and we can jump back and forth and never make it. Everyone's welcome in our tribe. If you want to really get down and strongly believe, it really is, because there's never a place where we go where you're not in community, because we're human and we share this human experience, and we share the same questions, or the desire to know where we came from. What's purpose? I don't know a human being that doesn't long for purpose, even if it's you're going to preach on stage, or if it's the person that's been designated to get the water from the well in Africa. There's a purpose for your life. And once somebody has that purpose,
like it's individual,
it brings
but collective
meaning.
at the
Yeah,
same
it
time.
is. Well, if you can acknowledge it. If you can acknowledge that somebody fetching water is the same as you preaching on the stage.
So then are we saying that because there's a need for tribe? So what's like, you started with the question, like, what's the difference between tribe and community? Like you said, the healthy tribe version.
Yeah. So when it comes to,
it's
typically,
mix?
Well, again, it depends. Like B's earlier definition, tribes are used to building walls. All right. So that's in a negative sense. So that's operating in your dark space, right? Or a tribe can be
Protective?
a strong, they believe strongly about certain things and welcome anyone in. And it's not if I run into you, my tribe runs into you, and you think something different, we have to kill you.
Right.
We have to freaking verbally kill you, emotionally kill you, spiritually kill you. It's not like that. Like, I believe strongly in what I believe, but I can get attacked by these Christian people online, and I don't need to kill them back. I don't need to fight back. I don't need to anything. Even though I have these strong beliefs that make me a part of a certain tribe, it's not one in which that I will inflict anything on you when we come to a disagreement.
Almost like the disagreement with a tribe becomes personal. It becomes about identity, whereas maybe a disagreement in a community becomes about the conversation. We disagree in conversation. I'm not going to tear you down as a human being, whereas a tribe, I have to tear you down because I need to feel safe again to know you're wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I think that's spot on. And I think even one of the other things too is when you actually read Paul's letters to the church, how much time is this man spending on how to treat each other?
Oh my gosh,
Because
right.
they really struggled with
Right,
that. You
every
know?
single letter.
And like, one of the things this guy brings up, and I read a little snippet of it, but we're all familiar with the love passage in 1 Corinthians 13.
Every wedding.
And when you really think about the context in which he was writing this in the way that they treated each other in community. That is the context of that. So like, I'll read it for you right now. We're all familiar with this. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful. It is not arrogant or rude. Love does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrong, but rejoices in the right. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. Don't think about that in relation to your spouse. Think about that in relation to your community. Like, that's what he's talking
Wow.
about. Like,
That's
this
good.
description has everything to do with the fundamental attitudes of patience, humility, tolerance, kindness, resilience, generosity, confidence, perseverance, optimism. These attitudes aren't this individual. This isn't even our relationship to God. This is how we're supposed to relate to one another in community. And then when you think about this, right? So the Galatians, having been informed that love is the chief of the fruits of the spirits, are encouraged not merely do good to those who are of the household of faith, but to also bear one another's burdens. This is community. 1 Corinthians, Paul speaks of the need for the members to have the same care for one another as to suffer and rejoice with one another in their humiliations and their triumphs. In Romans, he urges his readers to not please themselves. Each of us must please our neighbor for the good purpose of building up the neighbor and to live in harmony with one another in accordance to Christ Jesus. Like, all of that, he is trying to, this is his vision of what community is supposed to look like. And when I think about that, I'm like, oh man, I'm not there.
Yeah, right.
I can only dream of trying to get there. But I remember rereading this a little bit today, and I was just, even my mind was blown about that. Even just thinking about 1 Corinthians 13. It was read at our wedding, and I had no idea. I was like, okay,
Well,
love
we
means,
do that, right? We do
Yeah.
that. We bring it down to like, okay, just like figure it out in your marriage, like just like to become one, like love
Yeah.
like that.
Your
but it's
little
like
tribe.
the way he was writing it
Yeah.
was like in your community.
Yeah.
If you can
Like,
figure it out in your community, doing it in your marriage is way easier.
I would say like even like not being married right now, currently in this season of life, been there, done that. Oh my gosh, Elise. I'll do it again, guys. Calm down.
Been there, done that.
Can't say don't
The
knock
real
it till you try
marriage.
it.
But even with my friendship with Katie, I really felt this sense, and she had at the same time of like, I really feel like I need to learn relationship before my real marriage with Katie. And so it's like, we've figured this out too. So we're not married, right? And like, I still love men, like a bunch, super straight. But like our relationship, it almost is like this weird thing that goes beyond, like it goes beyond friendship. It's like 100% family. But it's not tribal in the sense that everyone else is bad. It's just this safety of home. So it's like the healthy tribal is home. And that's how, isn't that how it started? It was like, when you're here, you're safe. When you're here, you're home. We're going to protect you. And somewhere along the way, it became whatever is not home is evil and is bad, and became fear. And it's like, that's actually,
and it's understandable back then. Back then, it is understandable. Because it was a thing, families killing family. Like it wasn't.
Yeah, Romeo and Juliet. We all know that history story. Like very true.
It wasn't it wasn't necessarily a safe place to be around, because again, you don't have
you needed it.
Societal norms or cultures that brought up, okay, we are a civilized
laws and countries.
We're gonna
let's all agree not to kill each other. Cool.
This is right, this is wrong. So it makes sense. It doesn't make sense now.
Yep.
Now what makes sense is really finding more things that you are in common with your neighbor, with the people that even you disagree with. Yeah. If you can't have a conversation with someone that you disagree with, then your mentality is probably way more tribal than communal.
And even like, not just like, can you get through it and pretend like you're interested? Yeah. If you can't internally not shut down, if you can't internally
actually care about what they
already be thinking about your response instead of saying, how are we similar, or like, where are they coming from? Because that's the thing, is that we can all put on a face and have a conversation with someone we disagree with, but can you really find a bridge rather than a way to put up a wall?
Or even validate their opinion, even if it disagrees with yours.
Came to that.
Because it's their lived experience. Mm-hmm. However they got there, it's real to them. As real as it is to you. Even though you may think it's the craziest idea or the dumbest thing or the whatever, to actually honor them and their experience and not like shit on them. Like, that's really difficult for a lot of people, because we typically come to a conversation with the idea of, I'm right. And Jordan Peterson, he always says this. He's like, what I like to try to practice is, when I come to a conversation, I like to believe that the person that I'm going to converse with can teach me something. And if you approach a conversation like that,
you can learn from everyone.
Yeah, because their words mean something. They have something to offer. And if you look at people like that, it's really hard to like look down at someone who you believe, man, this person can say something that can change my life. Mm-hmm. Whether we agree or not agree on this or that, something that they've experienced in life and how they're going to communicate to me could change the way I see everything if I let them. Yeah. And that's a beautiful, like, communal way of thinking. Sheesh. Which I think the first step is, not thinking you're right all the time.
I have so many examples now that you said that, like, in my head. Like, one of the most frustrating parts for me of moving to Huntington, the OC, and it's not everyone, but a lot of people that I've had conversations with, we go back to the like Black Lives Matter movement / like the All Lives Matter crap. And it's like this, there is this thing where it's like, you can't have a conversation with me about, and I'm a white person, but like, as me trying to tell you like, hey, where people, why I protested, where I'm coming from as a white human, not even like, haven't even lived experience as a Black person, right? And so it's like, that has been the most frustrating thing, of seeing these walls go up because I said 3 words and all they want to talk about is the spiritual roots of Black Lives Matter. And so for me, it's been so like frustrating of like seeing this and not really having a name for it until like this conversation. But now I'm like, oh crap. And then also realizing in my own life where I have put up walls because of someone I disagreed with, and then in my head, I've already been thinking about, okay, shut this conversation down quickly, move on, rather than being like, maybe you have something to teach me too.
It's tribal, bro. When you can, it's,
How do you get out of tribal mentality?
you can't think that your shit is the best all the time.
Is that how to do it? Like, is that?
That's how I got out of it. When I stopped thinking
I'm sure
that I'm
people are listening
always
that are
right.
like, oh crap, I've got these things in my, like, how do you get out of it?
We all do it, and I always laugh because it's like it always it rears its head during political season. People just
During
start
Mondays
talking
and
like
Tuesdays
they
and
know
Wednesdays
and they know and they know, and it's just like, bruh, it's okay if you know for yourself. It doesn't have to go past that. You can learn from people who may not agree with you. You can learn from other people who don't believe in everything you believe in. Once you can open yourself up to that reality, then what you think just becomes really important to you, you know? And that's awesome. It doesn't have to be as important to you as it is to me. And I think that's where it all goes wrong. That's where once you meet that, you can feel it when it's tribal because there's an aggression, almost a violence, whether it's a verbal violence.
You realize I might be in danger.
Yeah, because this person's going to shout me down or they're going to go off. We've seen it so many times. And it's like, this is tribalism. Where community is like, okay, we disagree here, but we're humans and we all really just want the best for this country. We want the best for each other. We do really want.
You said that thing as well of like, with even like America, and you said off air, so I hope I'm not saying anything. You just cut it out if it's like saying something bad. But like the idea of like when it's like people against us, we become, what was it? Community internally and tribal externally.
Correct. Like whenever America has typically gone into war. So like when 9/11 happened. Yeah. America became communal. We all felt it. So we loved each other. There was an outpouring of love. There wasn't no one. Well, maybe there was a super small fraction of people that are like, no war. Mostly everyone was like, you can line up, kill him. You can line up everybody on the borders of America and everybody would have guns like ready. Okay. And we had a clear enemy. So we became tribal as a nation, communal within the walls.
What happens, but with not healthy. Maybe like what happened though with, did everyone feel that way in America? Like coming to, do you know what I mean? Like did everyone feel like or did people that were like Middle Eastern or whatever, did they feel like I'm outside of this tribe now?
Well, they were forced out, even though a lot of them did not
I'm a kid that was in Australia at this time as well.
Did not agree with what happened. There's a lot of Muslims that were like, we're not down for this.
We're not with them.
But because they were Muslim, they got pushed out, and it was it was rocky. You know what I'm saying? So it's
so then they were like, I'm out of this tribe because of my
completely. Yeah.
So it's just so interesting.
And that is a scary place to be because at that moment it's violence.
100. Oh, we felt it in Australia.
It's violence, and it was crazy.
I wanted to move to America though, so I was like, I stand with America.
That's why I think it was important to have this conversation because
it's good.
If your emotions rise to that place of so much anger or even violence
on anything,
on any level, then you are operating within a tribal mentality, and that is a very scary place to be because it has led people to do the most heinous things in the world. Yeah. As opposed to a communal aspect where you're truly okay with understanding that your neighbor may think differently, but they are still your neighbor. And you share this thing called humanity. You breathe the same air. You eat the same, you need the same things to live. And that means that you have way more in common. There's way more that y'all can really rock with and agree on than not. And that's freaking beautiful. And as far as the church goes, if we can get there, man, I really want to see how that looks like. It's hard because it doesn't, I was just having a conversation with a girl online who, I posted a thing with me and Ange and a little TikTok, and I slapped her butt. And everyone was dying laughing and saying, oh, you're my favorite couple. And this one girl was like, Ephesians such and such, don't do what is not holy and just saying. And that was her thing. And I was like,
they love the just saying.
It made me remember this meme that the atheist brought up. He goes, bless your heart. How many times have you guys heard bless your heart? And he put up a meme. He goes, inside every bless your heart is a little bit of fuck you.
100%.
And I was like, oh my God, he's so
just
true.
saying. Yeah, same thing.
Absolutely. So if we can get to that.
But it will be with Christians against Christians too, though. So like I post anything about me preaching, or two lately, like Women and Jesus, which is our like month for like our club devotion thing of like, hey, by the way, Jesus like told women to like go and tell. He made room for women to learn theology, and the angel at the tomb was like, hey, go and tell to all the women. They were the first ones that went in, right? Without fail. Look at my comment section, and it is always just coming at me, and I'm like, dude, this is just because this isn't your experience, but like that's cool. Like now, and they're like, I'm unfollowing you. I thought this wasn't what this was, and I was like, what? I'm a female that preaches. What are you talking about? How did you not know, bro? Like, how did you not know? One guy reneged his engagement proposal, which I hadn't apparently even answered.
Oh my
He was like,
God.
just so you know, I'm not asking to marry me anymore.
We're just here for the yoga pics.
Sorry, bro. Yeah.
we're just here for
my
that.
God.
Look, man, I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. And it's a challenge, man. I'm curious to see if any of you guys would be honest enough to say, hey, I do think tribally. And
we all have an area like
I think
that.
I think it's definitely a thing. So keep the conversation happening. I'd love to hear in the comment section. Light it up. Love to hear what you guys think. Follow
Except
us.
if it's about women in ministry. Thank you so much.
Even that, though, because I would love to have you on the podcast and talk about
I
that.
would like to be on that one.
So we love you guys. We hope you find a seat at the table. And if you don't, you are always welcome at ours. Cheers. Back with the wine, with the vino, baby.
Cheers.